Good morning. Good morning. My name is Lakeisha Hines, and you are watching Ask the Experts. I am so happy to be here with you all. I missed you. I feel like it's been a little minute since I've been here, but I'm so happy to be back. I'm so happy to be back. Happy Friday to everyone out there. Thank you so much for continuing to watch the show. Thank you so much for continuing to support Couples Academy. It means the world to us. We appreciate each and every one of you. And you know what it is. You know it's Friday. It's Ask the Experts. You already know what you're supposed to do. So I am going to have complete and total faith in you that you're going to do what you know you need to do, which is to drop your questions. Don't wait until there's 2 minutes left to drop your questions. Please drop your questions in the chat so that I can address them. I'm happy to do so. Somebody already got here earlier. She was ready to go like before we were even logged on, set up, ready to go. And so the early bird catches the worm. So I'm going to make sure that I take my time and answer this question. Take a deep dive and really take time to really dig into this question, because I do think it will support many of you. I think this is a challenge that many folks have, and so I do think it will be beneficial to everyone. I do have some other questions that I will address, but I want you to make sure that you take the time to drop your question in here so that it can get answered. Additionally, please drop your name, where you're streaming from, so I can shout you out. I love to do that. And you know, I love interactive conversation. So if something you hear resonates with you, let me get an amen. Let me get a thumbs up. Let me get a heart. Let me get something, okay, to know that you're listening, you're paying attention, and that is resonating with you. All right. And you can also share if you don't agree. That's fine too, right? So, good morning, Kristen Renee. Good morning, Kristen Renee. Kristen says, "Hey, I have a question. How do I break a trigger with my husband when one of them is his mother in law? He always thinks she's talking behind his back when she's not." All right. He always thinks that she is talking behind his back when she is not. And so, again, I thought this was an extremely powerful question. Thank you so much, Kristen, for your question, because I do believe this is something that impacts many folks, many folks. Okay. So, first and foremost, let me say this. We know that one of the top 5 conflicts in marriage, one of the top reasons why couples end up in conflict, is because of in-laws. Okay. It is one of those things that we all have to learn to navigate and deal with. And so I'm wondering, have you all figured out? I don't know how long you've been married. That's one thing. Don't know how long you've been married. I don't know if you all have created healthy boundaries as it pertains to in-laws. And that can be one of the reasons why there's conflict, right? Because we don't have healthy boundaries. And therefore, everyone doesn't know their place, they don't know their position, and then they end up overstepping. And then if it's your parent, you may not know how to communicate with that parent and let them know that, hey, you're kind of crossing a line here. Also, if it's your in-law, you don't want to be disrespectful. You don't want to say anything that may make them feel as if you don't like them, you don't love them, that you don't want them a part of your world. And you kind of default to your spouse to say, hey, can you handle your parents? Which honestly, initially, that is what needs to happen. There needs to be a conversation between husband and wife. You all create a strategy, a plan, you're in agreement, and then whomever the parent, whomever the spouse, whichever spouse's parent it is that is involved in this conflict, they need to go to their bio parent and have that conversation with them. Now, if things don't get resolved after that, then we can potentially bring the spouse in so there can be a group conversation. And if that doesn't work, then we can bring in a third party. Okay, so there are definitely steps to it, but it is so important that there is a healthy boundary established between the in laws. And a lot of times with newlyweds, when they first get married, they're struggling with how to separate those relationships because you've had your parents your entire life and you've only been married to this person for however long, right? So it's hard sometimes to figure out what the appropriate boundary is between the marriage and those in-laws. Okay, so I'm saying I don't know if you all have established that foundation yet, set those healthy boundaries, and that could be part of the issue. Now, if that's not the well, if that's the issue, then we do need to go back and we need to establish some healthy boundaries to make sure that there's nobody overstepping, nobody commenting on things that they shouldn't be commenting on, weighing in on things that they shouldn't be weighing in on, like how you're rearing your children or what you're doing with your finances, right? So we need to make sure that we do then go back and establish that healthy foundation, make sure we have good boundaries in place and that everybody's in agreement and in alignment. If you have set a healthy foundation and you do have those healthy boundaries and we're still having conflict, now I'm thinking you're saying he's triggered. So, in order for there to be a trigger, that means that something had to happen to create some type of trauma that would lead to a trigger. Okay. So, what has transpired between your husband and your mother in law that makes him feel triggered? This is not something that usually just randomly happens, right? So, it says that he's thinking, your question says that he's thinking that the mother in law is talking about him behind his back when she is not. Well, did she used to talk about him behind his back and now she isn't? Where's that coming from? That typically does not just come out of thin air unless there's something that just internally within your husband that he's insecure about. That's a possibility as well. Maybe there's some unresolved issues that he has that he needs to deal with that's independent of you and independent of your mother. Okay. So I'm not sure if it's him or if it's previous experiences that he's had with your mother in law. However, I can see how this can have you feeling stuck in the middle, right? Between your husband and your mother in law. So you can't break the trigger. That's ultimately the quick and easy response is you can't break it. He has to. He has to be able to identify one, why he's triggered, what is causing the trigger, and then we can put action steps in place but how he needs to resolve them. But typically just understand when somebody says they're triggered, that typically means that there's a stimuli brought on or a worsened symptom that has to do with their mental health, right? It could be an event, could be a memory, it could be something that is new, but it resembles something that he's dealt with in the past. And so he's got to find peace with whatever it is that's stressing him out about his mother in law. He's got to find that equilibrium. He's got to find that homeostasis between being informed and active because sometimes it's enough to just educate yourself, but other times there's action that needs to follow. So he's got to figure that out. And of course, always reach out if this is something that you all have tried to resolve on your own and you haven't had success. This is what we're here for. We're here to help you navigate these issues that come up that are causing conflict, disconnect, discord, disrespect in your marriage. We have to engage in solutions that are going to produce healthy, lasting results. And a trigger is literally anything that can lead to a negative emotional reaction. Okay, it's usually brought on by something that has occurred in the past, some past trauma, past experiences, maybe issues with being able to regulate emotions. Maybe he struggles with being able to regulate his mood. And again, if that's what it is, then that's independent of your mother in law. But most often, triggers are connected to trauma. Okay, so we really need to get to the root of that. And so I'll just say, generally speaking, for anyone who's dealing with triggers, okay, this isn't specific to your situation because I don't know the details. So I'll just speak generally for those who may be dealing with triggers. You must enforce limits. There has to be limits. You have to know your limits. You should not judge yourself for sticking to your limits. It is totally fine to say that I need a break. I need to back up from this situation. I need to take time to evaluate, assess it, And I really need to get a good understanding of where this is coming from. We do have to create some type of mental barrier, not a distraction, not avoiding, not acting like it's not happening, not that. That's not what we're talking about. But you have to learn how to, when these triggers come up, that you allow them to come up, you assign, attach an emotion to it. Okay, I'm feeling hurt, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling inadequate, I'm feeling disrespected, whatever it is. And then we say, okay, it's okay for me to have this moment, but I can't stay in this moment. And then whatever it is that you're feeling, why are you feeling that way? Once you're able to understand the why, then you'll know what you need to do to adjust moving forward. And then we want to make sure that we are engaging in activities that are not contributing to the problem, but are becoming a part of the solution. Maybe he needs to have a conversation with your mother-in-law. Maybe there's some communication that needed to happen a long time ago, but didn't happen. And maybe that needs to happen now, because now he's getting triggered. It's starting to seep into your marital situation, I assume. And so now we need to take some further action. So we may need to have a conversation with mother-in-law, but he has to embrace his emotions. He has to embrace those thoughts, but not allow himself to stew in it, marinate in it, not just allow those triggers to take over. He also has to expand his viewpoint, because sometimes we're focused on whatever the issue is and we're not looking at the big picture. One of the things that I do all the time, if I am feeling triggered by something, whatever the case may be, I literally stop and take a moment and say, okay, is this a me thing, a we thing, or a JC thing? And what I mean by that is it something that is internally inside of myself, independent of anyone else? If the answer to that question is yes, then I don't need to involve anybody else. I need to deal with me. I need to get to the root of my issue, and I need to address that. Now, if it's a we thing, that means my husband is involved and I need some level of support from him. If it's a JC thing, that means that's a Jesus Christ thing. It's something I need to take to God in prayer. Okay. So we have to be able to evaluate if it's a me thing, we thing, or a JC thing. Okay. So that we can govern ourselves accordingly. So hopefully, Miss Kristen Renee, you're listening. I hope that answers your question. And if not, put a comment here. Let me know if you have a further question, if there's more that I need to expound on, but hopefully that addresses your issue and anybody else who may be struggling with triggers. So good morning, always, Allie05. I think you're saying you're tuning in from New York. Those of you who are just tuning in, please let me know who you are, where you're streaming from. I love to shout you out. Absolutely love to shout you out. We're going to take a quick break so that we can give you time to drop your questions in here. I don't want you to go anywhere else. Do not swipe left or right. Stay tuned. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Thank you for watching Ask the Experts. Welcome back. Welcome back. You're watching Ask the Experts. My name is Lakeisha Hines, and I'm so happy to be here with you all. Happy Friday. It is a beautiful day where I am. I don't know where you are because you didn't do what I asked you to do, which was to let me know where you're streaming from. Hey, Daryl. Good. Wow, Mr. Gardner. Good morning from South Carolina. I appreciate you being here. I miss you. Haven't seen you in a while. And Mrs. Gardner, please give her my love. All right. So while we're on the break, some of you actually did jump in here and post questions. So let's jump to it. Now, I will say, Miss Anna DeVirgo, you just said if spouse has an alcoholism problem. I saw a comma. I thought you were going to continue, but maybe that was a period. I'm not sure. So, what I'll do is just speak to having a spouse who is dealing with alcoholism. It's a real thing. There's so many out there who are dealing with that, and it can be a struggle for sure. There's a huge impact on the marital relationship, especially if the spouse is not in treatment. So, some of the things that you can do as a spouse when you are married to someone who is struggling with alcoholism, which we know is a disease and it impacts the entire family. First of all, sounds like you're aware that there's an issue and your spouse is aware that there's an issue. And to me, that's one of the first steps. Is this something that your spouse, has had confirmed, or is this you feel like they're drinking too much? And I mean no disrespect when I say that, but there are a lot of times spouses will diagnose their spouse and saying, oh, they're an addict, they're a sex addict. That's one of the biggest ones we get. Also, spouses will say my spouse is a narcissist and they have not been diagnosed with narcissism. And so I just want to be sure that this is something that has been confirmed and it's not just, a feeling that you have or that's your perception. So if it has been confirmed that your spouse is dealing with alcoholism, you've already taken the first step, which is to be aware of your spouse's behavior and what effect it's having on your spouse as well as your marital relationship and potentially your family if you have children. And I would say it's extremely important to be supportive. Hopefully your spouse is seeking professional help and they are on a road to recovery, because nothing will change if they don't change. And so they need to get professional help, and we are here to assist with that as well. We actually have 2 certified addiction recovery specialists. And so all you have to do is reach out, make that discovery call, and we can assist your spouse as well as yourself with any issues that may be arising because of the alcoholism. Um, it's funny, I was having a conversation with one of my clients this week, and we were talking about their spouse who I was meeting with the wife, and the husband is dealing with sex addiction. And it's one of the things we were talking about is how we have to have healthy boundaries in place. We need to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in a position where we will be tempted, right? So we need to avoid social activities that do not involve, we need to avoid social activities that involve drinking alcohol, or we're going to engage in new social activities that actually do not involve drinking alcohol. That is so important. We don't want to put ourselves in harm's way and risk being tempted and relapsing. All right. We definitely have to make sure that we are focusing on ourselves and prioritizing self care. So, you being the spouse who's not the alcoholic, you need to ensure that you are taking care of yourself, because you need to be healthy as well. So, I highly recommend that you get support for yourself too, because your spouse hopefully is in treatment and then they're getting the support that they need, but you need to make sure you're getting the support that you need as well. Okay. There has to be radical realness and honesty, openness, transparency, vulnerability about how you're feeling, how your husband's addiction is impacting you, how it's affecting you, and what you see about what you see regarding how his addiction is impacting him, because a lot of times they don't even recognize how they're showing up and how their behaviors are impacting their spouses. So that should be some real transparent, courageous conversations that you all are having. You definitely want to make sure you're holding your spouse accountable also for their actions and the things that they're not doing because of their alcohol abuse. You know, a lot of times they don't keep their word because they're so focused on getting that next drink or trying to not have that next drink. Okay, so hopefully that assists with that. I wasn't sure. Oh, I see you added on. Okay. He has admitted to being addicted but doesn't want professional help. He is managing okay in his own, but from time to time his drinking will increase. Exactly. And that's my point. He has to get professional help. This is not something that he can do on his own. It is a disease. And so if someone was diagnosed with cancer, for example, you need to go and get treatment, right? You need to seek professional help. If you broke your arm, are you going to say, I think I might be able to Google, go on YouTube and watch some videos about how to heal a broken arm and then we'll just manage this at home? No, you go, you get x-rays, you go and get something for the pain, you go and get surgery if needed, but you get a cast and there's a repair process and there's a recovery process. So this is not something that someone who is truly dealing with addiction, this is not something they can manage on their own. So I highly encourage your spouse to get help. I know you said that they don't want to, and so you can't force them. You can strongly encourage, but you more than anybody else need to make sure that you're focused on taking care of yourself because it can totally take a toll on you, weigh on you, and cause you to become someone who you are not proud to look at in the mirror. So I urge you to get support, seek help for yourself, and your spouse will have to come to that place, rock bottom, where they realize I can't do this by myself, and then they go and get help. All right. Uh Always Allie05 says, my husband and I are living separately and taking one day at a time and trying to move forward in restoring our marriage. What can we do? Great question. Thank you for posting all of these good questions this morning. I will say always, Allie, it is one of the things that we work on here at Couples Academy as well. Sometimes clients need what's called a controlled separation. And I don't know if this is what you all have done or if you just said, hey, we're just not going to live together anymore. But if you have not actually done a controlled separation, meaning we have boundaries in place, we've come to an agreement about our expectations, we're doing individual work, we're still working on our relationship, then that's what needs to happen. If you have not done that, that's what needs to happen. So I would say you need to make sure that you all are getting help from a professional. Again, we did not come into this world knowing how to do marriage. Most of us were taught how to do marriage wrong versus how to do it right. And so this is why we're here. This is why you're watching. You understand that you need support. And so you need to reach out and make that discovery call. Taking one day at a time is good, but what are you doing while you're living separately? Are you just doing the same thing that you've been doing while you were living together and you think just being apart physically will miraculously and magically heal the relationship? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm asking the question because oftentimes that is what happens. So there's work that needs to be done individually as well as collectively, and it can happen simultaneously. But you need to make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time and in the right way. So I highly encourage you to reach out, make that discovery call, get support. Let us help you so that you all are maximizing this time that you were apart so we can get you back under that same roof sooner versus later. We have something called the last chance weekend. And I think this would be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience for you and your husband to be able to come together, pull together 8 months of counseling in 3 days and figure out how to restore this marriage and literally catapult you into a healing process. And so I would love to be that one. I would love to be that one. Reach out, make that call. Let's get this going. Let's make it happen. Because the more time you are separated, the more time you are apart, the less likely you are to come together. And that's just statistics. That's just research, right? So please reach out, reach out, reach out. Hi, Noya Zev. Greetings from South Africa. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. Beauty of Love, T. Jones says, When do you stop asking your spouse questions about them cheating? And why, after so many questions, they don't want to talk about it anymore? Wonderful question. Love this question, Beauty of Love T. Jones. Okay. So here at Couples Academy, we have a process, right? And a lot of times, couples, when there is infidelity, they're not following a process. They're trying to navigate this thing on their own, and that's for multiple reasons. It's not judgment; it's just what it is, right? So with our process, we take you through a very structured, a very comprehensive deep dive or what have you into the infidelity. We make sure that all of your questions are answered, that you get all of the information that you are seeking, and we call that full disclosure. After full disclosure, you should be empty. There shouldn't be any more questions. There shouldn't be anything else left to be said. There should be no stones unturned because of the way that we do this process. And so after that, there's an agreement that we're not going to keep bringing up the affair. We're not going to keep talking about it because we've already done that. And the only time we bring up the affair is if there are new questions or if there's new information that somehow surfaces, then we'll have a conversation about that. But we should not be discussing things that we've already talked about over and over and over again. Because what happens now, answering part two of your question, why don't they want to talk about it anymore? Is because every time they have that conversation, it literally is like holding a mirror up in front of their face, reminding them of that person who most likely they no longer desire to be. The betrayed, when they're truly, excuse me, the betrayer, when they are truly remorseful and they have a healthy dose of guilt and shame, when they are truly trying to change their lives and be a better person, they don't want to be reminded about that old man. And I'm not saying this gender specific, I'm talking about spiritual man, right? They don't want to be reminded of that past person who they were because they're trying to remove themselves so far away from whomever that person was that truly devastated and hurt their spouse. And so every time we have a conversation about it, it's a reminder of that person who they no longer desire to be. And so it literally is like reminding them, see, remember what you did? Remember who you used to be? It's like us as believers, when we get saved and we turned truly transform our lives and turn our lives over to God, and we, allow that old man to die. When we see someone who we haven't seen in a long time, like we haven't seen them since we got saved, and they're like, "Ooh, I remember when. I remember when you used to be in the club. I remember when you used to be dropping it like it's hot. I remember when you used to be out on the corner, or I remember when you used to be cussing people out all the time." Whatever it is. When you're no longer that person, you don't want to be reminded about those old things that you used to do. So that's what it is, Beauty of Love T. Jones. They don't want to be reminded about the person who they no longer desire to be. And after you have asked so many questions, um, because it is difficult to go through that line of questioning. A lot of times, the betrayers say they feel like they're in court and they're on the stand, being examined and cross-examined, and it just becomes overwhelming, and it's a lot to manage. Now I get it. I know what you're thinking. Well, had you not cheated in the first place, we wouldn't have to go through all the answering all these questions. And that is the true statement. But I will say that it's so important that you all get support. So reach out, let us help you. Let us get you to a place where you're feeling complete with all of your questions being answered, and your spouse getting the support that they need to be able to show up for you in the way that you need them to. So I want to say thank you all so much for being here with me today. Thank you for dropping your questions in a timely fashion. And we do this every week. We're here every single week. So make sure you are watching Monday through Friday and you're watching Ask the Experts on Friday. We love you. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your weekend. Bye.